Alright, what this is going to be is a build tutorial for the Kanger Subtank RBAs. Now there's two different types of RBAs for the subtanks. There's the V1 style with the little juice holes on the bottom. Let's see if we can get this in close enough where the camera will focus. And then there's the V2 style with the holes in the side. And most of the people that have the white, black, etc. have the V2s, but some of the older stainless steel ones have the V1s, so I'm just going to do a build on both, just to show the differences, etc. Now, the primary build is very simple on these. Two screws that act like clamps for the coil. On the V2, you unscrew the little set screw on the side, and you have the same two screws. Okay. Now with the V1, it actually screws, and a lot of times after it's been used it will stick, and it's going to be hard to get off. And I recommend using a little screwdriver or another object to hold into the opening for the juice. And then I usually use one of these nice little grippers. You can get it almost any store nowadays, and it really helps to get the top cap off, or the chimney off, and then the very top also unscrews. On the V2, the very top unscrews as well. For this tutorial, I'll be using a 24 gauge Kanthal, and I like the way the 24 gauge works with this RBA. Works really well. 26 gauge also works very well also. So basic build, get you some wire, clip it off the row, and I'll be using Coil Master V3. Okay, so you put your wire in your Coil Master, and usually what I do is I'll sort of start at a half turn, and then with this build, since you're wanting the wires, most builds you're wanting the wires to come straight off same side. This build you're wanting them to come off opposite sides. So where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wraps. I usually go just a little bit more to have a little bit of play. Cut off the excess wire, and there's the start of the first coil. Now the Coil Master does make a tight coil, and these are real good coils generally, depending on what you're looking for. Now for this build, for the RBAs for the Kanger, subtanks, I like using a loose coil. The easy way to do this, once you got your tight coil made, all these nice little Visa things you get now, or if you have a debit credit card you can use, which is what I like using. You just put the wire on it and sort of turn it like you would a screw, all the way till it comes off the other end. What this does, it spaces out the coil. Now you have a nice spaced coil. And also you'll notice that the ends of the wires, where one was up a little, wrapped around just a little more, has actually come undone just a bit to be almost exactly where you're going to need it when you put it on. And then put it on the RBA. Then what I generally do, I put the top back on with the coil and sort of press it down a couple of times. And now it's ready to go on the RBA. On the RBA, the two screws, you loosen them. And what also helps with this is if you take the base of your subtank, you can actually screw the RBA into the base. And then if you have a mod that's turned off or an isometer meter, you can screw the base into the motor or mod. So you have a platform to work on. You loosen both screws. You don't want to take either of them out all the way, but you do want to loosen them where you can get the wire to be clamped down with them. And then you can get, and sometimes you'll have to loosen, tighten, etc., etc. So you get the wires down in there. Once you do, try to get the coil as centered as possible, and don't tighten, don't do it real tight, but sort of snug them up just a bit where they still have play. Take what you used to wrap the coil, stick it back through the coil, and position the coil where it's as straight as possible over the air hole at the bottom. So be something like this. As you can see, it's pretty much over the air hole. Then you can tighten them down just a bit more. And sometimes it does like to move on you while you're tightening it, so sort of have to be careful. Don't be afraid to use the coil master, whatever you use to make the coil, to hold it where you want it while you tighten it down. And this is where a base comes in handy, because it's very hard to do this without a base. Let's see, I wish I could get this up high enough where this can be seen. Let me see if I can reposition my camera. Let's see, almost. Alright, so Like I say, you want to get it as centered as possible. And then tighten down the screws. And there you go. Now, since it's on meter, get done. And 0.45. That's what this build comes out each and every time I build it. In fact, I very rarely use the all-meter anymore, because 5 wraps, it's going to come out to the same resistance with this gauge of wire. Okay. Well, once you got the coil in there, you want to make sure you sort of push it down just a little bit. You don't want it where it's completely down, but you want it a bit lower than where it's sort of right, the middle is right there. We have room underneath it, but it's not up level with the screws. Now the next thing is to get rid of the extra wire. Easiest way to do it is just bend. I like using a little pair of pliers and just back and forth, back and forth. And boom. Same to the other side. This side's a little longer, so back and forth, back and forth. Now if you see the coil start moving, you may need to reposition it, make sure the screw is tight. Sometimes they will get a little loose when you're doing this part. So have to snug them down just a bit more. Alright, then check the ohms again. Make sure both are tightened down, and you should have close to the same. I think this came out to 0.47, so and if you tap on the wire, make sure you don't see the ohms change. If you see the ohms start changing, it's not as tight, something is loose or something is not making a good connection somewhere. Let's see. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and build the coil for the other one off camera, and I'm going to come back and show how to wick these. Alright, now it's time to wick. So you can use any type of cotton. Doesn't really matter that much. If you use the Japanese cotton, I find that, make sure I show you right. If you fold it over in half, and then cut it, you won't, that way you're not making too long of strips for this, because you really don't need that long of a strip for this particular wicking. And here's some I've been using for these type builds for a while now. Which has already been cut several times. So maybe a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch in length. You just want to make sure that the length of it goes enough past so you'll have room for wicking. Since this was done at 2.5 millimeters, I usually find about 3 to 4 millimeter wide. And this is all line of sight, eyeballing, guessing, but pretty close. Is just about perfect. A lot of people like taking the top and bottom layers off. I don't really think it matters too much. I just start rolling it like you would any other wick, just gently. And then one end, do a little tighter so you can start it through your coil. And you want it snug, not tight. Okay, and the one I got on here right now is the V1 RBA. So go ahead and now on this one, same as the next one, which I will show you, you sort of cut it just above the top of this cap. Not much, just a little, maybe a millimeter or two. And at this time, if you have any juice, you know you're going to be using in the tank, it's a good time to wet it down. And you can take your screwdriver, tweezers, and sort of just gently stuff it down. You don't want it to be tight, just gently. Because on this one, it has the slits in the bottom of it, which wick it. So you don't want to smash it hard. It will not wick right if you do that. Let's see. Then you would throw a couple of drops of juice on there. Fill your tank, put your tank on. Before you put your tank on, you want to make sure you put the top cap back on or it will come right out. Screw that on. And once it's juiced up, it's ready to go. Now, for the V2 with the holes in the side, basically it's pretty much the same procedure. About 3 millimeters, 3 to 4 millimeters. And when you cut it, you want to make sure that you are cutting it with the long part. So when you tug on it, it doesn't just pull apart. Or if you do it from the sides, it just doesn't have as much tension and will come apart. So you want to make sure the grain is right. And roll it. Snug, not tight. Now with this top, since it slides on, it has a screw on the side of it to hold it. Line it up. Make sure you got that screw in there, and you can go ahead and tighten that down. And again, with the trimming, you want to trim it just a couple of millimeters above just like that. Now, since this has the holes in the side, this is what some people find a bit tricky. Using a screwdriver, what you want to do is sort of work it down where it's covering the hole completely. See, same thing with the other side. See if I can do this for easier to see if the camera will focus. And just sort of gently tuck it down, and you can see it where it starts covering the hole. And you just want to make sure that hole is completely covered. And if you have just a little bit pooching out of the hole, that is just fine. It won't make any difference. You just want to make sure that that hole is completely covered. And check the other one. Sometimes you have to readjust it. This is generally where I like using the tweezers better than the screwdriver, but it can be done either way. So you have one side good, and then the other side. Be sure you put your top cap back on. You can go ahead and juice it before you put your top cap back on. Everything tight, and it is ready to be juiced. Fill your tank and it's ready to go. And I hope this has helped some people. In fact, give me just a second. What I'm going to do, let me see, what juice do I have in front of me that I would, let's see, make sure it's good and tight down. Yeah. Couple drops. Couple drops. Alright, then fill the tank. And I'm trying to watch this on the screen and do it at the same time, which is sometimes a bit difficult. So please bear with me. Okay. Snug. And I usually like letting it set for a few minutes. Not that that's absolutely necessary, but okay. Let's see how it does. Yeah. Has that sort of new cotton taste to it, which usually, with this particular cotton I'm using, that generally goes away after the first 10 good puffs, 5 to 10 depending on this juice. But as you can see, it's working good. And don't see any leaks in there. Giving good flavor and good bait. Like I say, I hope this has helped some of you out there with the Kanger tanks and the RBAs for them. It's a great way to save money. And saving money, especially with the price of coils. I mean, the coils for the Subtanks aren't that bad at all. But still, you can, with wire and cotton, as cheap as it is, I mean, you're talking probably less than $1, probably less than 50 cents, depending on the amount you buy of the cotton and the wire. So it can save a little bit of money. Well, y'all have a great day or night, and hope to see you on Vapors TV on the Villainous Vapes channel. You can catch Brian Gladness with my buddy Surreal and myself, and Blue Phoenix generally on Thursday nights, and I love it when I forget things off the top of my head. And if I remember right, that's from 11 to 1 Eastern Time, 10 to midnight Central.